everyone, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today we are creating a trio of stencils plus coordinating dies for my May 2024 edition of Making the Cut. Making the Cut is my series here on the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel where we talk about all things die cutting. The featured products for today's card are the Tiled Posy Layering Stencil Set, the Flower Power Stencils and Dies. There is a coordinating stamp set if you want to do some stamping as well. And then we're going to feature some birthday greetings from the big old birthday stamp set, as well as Cue the Confetti, which I didn't show. We're going to start with 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panels of smooth white cardstock and our Tiled Posy set. Now, first I did think I would stencil, and then I decided I think I'll ink blend the background first and then do my layering stencils over the top. This was kind of a process because I chose to do 3 different colorways. If you were doing all of the same colorways, I think you could streamline it a little bit more, but I'm a big fan of rainbowing all of the things, and so I chose to go ahead and do 3 different colorways, all of the same design. Starting with my background color here, I am taking some PEONY ink and ink blending that into the top part of my panel. Next, I'm taking some of the sherbet ink and we are going to blend that into the PEONY. I wanted to do fun color combinations here, bright, springy, summery type of cards that would really work for many different occasions. Next, I took some zest, and then I'm going to go back with my Simon Says Stamp blending tools and blend those colors into each other on the background. This is going to give us a much more seamless design. Anywhere that you see that it's kind of blotchy, I did find that the ink, as it dries and absorbs into the cardstock, it's going to smooth out quite a bit. Then I am going to go ahead and take my same tones of ink. We're going to use like a shade darker or an ink that might be just a little bit darker than that, and we are going to stencil with the Tiled Posy over this. Now, because this is a layering stencil set, you could do all of these in different colors of ink. You're going to notice that I am going to be using just a shade darker. So I'm using rose ink here for the top portion of my design. Then I'm going to use mandarin ink for the orange and honey ink for the yellow. And I'm going to do this for 3 of the 4 stencils. That 4th stencil, we're going to do something a little bit different. And that is going to be the introduction of some opaque white grit paste from Tim Holtz to really showcase the center of the florals in this background design. And again, when you see the colors and how dark they look, I do find that they tend to mute out a little bit and they aren't quite as bold and in your face. Even though we're creating basically our own background pattern paper here and have lots going on, we still want it to just kind of reinforce the theme of our card and the rest of the florals on the card, as well as our sentiment, and not take over the entire design. So you'll notice, again, I'm just working my way through these 3 stencils. Because I am changing my colorway between each card, I do go and clean each of these stencils in between. And I just use some warm water and place them in a drying rack while I worked on other aspects of the card. Oh my gosh, it is already looking so beautiful. Now I am going to go ahead and place my grit paste on my background. And I'm showing you this even though you might be thinking, Nicole, I saw some text stamping in the background. How did you achieve that? Did you have to redo your background? And the answer is no. So I'm going to show you guys here in a little bit when I stamp the background. I actually stamped over the grit paste for this one because I'd already done it and it was dry. But for the other 2 backgrounds, I did go ahead and stamp them first and then apply the grit paste. I think either way will work, and I wanted to share that in case you find when you're creating that happens and you forget to do a step in between. I love how that grit paste looks. It gives you some fun texture. That isn't the last time we're going to use grit paste on today's card. So I'm going to speed through the creation of the remaining 2 backgrounds. Remember, you can always slow that down by clicking the gear here on the video on YouTube, and you can watch it as fast or as slow as you like. I did want to speed it up a little bit just to save some time. So now I am taking Seafoam, Limelicious, and Zest ink and blending these together. I kind of tried to stick to 3 of my favorite color combinations, and when you lay them all out together, it really does give you those rainbow vibes. And again, working hard to get a beautiful seamless transition from one color to the other. Just like before, we're going to take those tiled Posy stencils and we're going to blend a darker shade over the top of each. Honey ink over Zest, Perfection over the Limelicious, and Ocean over Seafoam. And we're going to do that with the 3 stencils. They line up so easily. I love doing this. Now, you could totally do the same thing without inking your background first if you want more of a white card base. I wanted the base of my card to be more colorful. I opted to do the ink blending first so that it wouldn't kind of distress or mute, if you will, the layering stencils quite so much. For my 3rd and final background today, we're going to go back with Seafoam, but this time we're going to pull in some Marine and some Lilac positively saturated inks. This is such a beautiful purple to aqua color combination. And again, I really want to work to get the most seamless transition as possible, nice and soft and super pretty. Now, I kind of was doing the dark, what I would call the darker color at the top, so I will flip this panel before I do my stenciling. It probably doesn't matter. I could have flipped it afterwards, but just to kind of keep my mind right, I did flip it with the purple up at the top. Now we're going to take Amethyst over the Lilac, Marine over the Cadet, and again, Ocean over the Seafoam. And we'll do this for all 3 stencils, and then we'll go wash those and let those dry while we work on the rest of our card design. Stenciling and die cutting is such a natural part of the process. I love that there are so many coordinating stencils now for our die cut images. So here is a sticky mat in my MISTI. I will be using the Friendship Text background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. Any sort of background text stamp will work here. You guys know I love my text background stamps. I will ink this up with the Simon Says Stamp white pigment ink and stamp that right over the background with grit paste. It worked fine. I didn't know if it would or not, so I didn't go ahead and do that step yet for the remaining 2 backgrounds. Next, I'm going to go ahead and stamp those 2 remaining backgrounds with my white pigment ink and the text, and then we will take that 4th and final stencil and we will add our grit paste centers for our florals. I'm using a palette knife, and then of course that white opaque grit paste from Tim Holtz. I even think grit paste in multiple colors or colors to match the background would be pretty as well, and it would blend in to the background a little bit more of that tone on tone effect rather than being so prominent. But I really do love the white grit paste. You could color the grit paste with re-inkers or other ink products if you wanted to, and change those colors or make custom colors. I'm doing a very thin layer. I really want this to dry quickly, so I'm just kind of trying to fill in all those little spaces. And then I will wash all of these tools immediately, including the insert for the stamp wheel. We're going to take now the Flower Power stencil. All of the layering pieces are on this 1 6x6 stencil. I found by taking some Post-it tape or washi tape or another low-tack medium, that really helps kind of keep your ink where you want it. I did switch to using smaller sizes. Simon Says Stamp blending brushes, like the small blending brushes or the round detail blending brushes. This is going to help keep that ink right where you want it to go. For this floral, I am picking one of the colors from the backgrounds for the 3 backgrounds I created, and I am applying the same 2 colors of ink I used for the pink in this case. And next we're going to do an aqua background and finally a purple. So I'm pulling one of the colors from the card base to create my large flower. For each card, we're going to have this 5-petal flower, then we're going to have the multi-petal flower and 3 small flowers plus 5 leaves per card. I kind of figured that out ahead of time so that I could plan how I wanted to create my backgrounds. For all of the cards, I pulled the colors of my flowers from the card backgrounds, and then I pulled the greens that I used in the aqua, green, and yellow card for my leaves. Now that means that the aqua, yellow, and green card has 1 less color for flowers on there. I kept those flowers all to aquas and yellows because I already have the green for the leaves. You could pull in another color if you wanted to, but I really, really liked just the yellow and the aqua. Once I have my 3 big flowers, I am going to do some flower centers in the darkest color. Now I did use both colors for the flower. You can see I just kind of blended in some darker on the edges of the petals, but I'm using that same darker color for the flower center. Instead of doing any stenciling with inks for the little 5 circle design that you can use in those flower centers, there's lots of ways you can mix and match these. You don't have to use them exactly like this, but I am actually going to use grit paste for those, and that will be one of my final steps here near the end. For the multi-petal flower, again, I am going to pick one of the colors from the background, and we're going to do very similar to what we just did for the largest flower. These are the 2 bigger flowers on the design. I felt like that balanced out the card well, and then we can mix in lots of leaves and those smaller flowers to blend it all out. So that was I think I actually used cantaloupe and sherbet. Maybe I used a little mandarin there too. Any kind of oranges. Here's our zest and honey. And I have a lot of little parts and pieces. By breaking this down when making multiple cards and doing all of my backgrounds, then all of the florals, then you'll see me stamp all of the sentiments and get those all prepped and ready. Then you can pull it all together super easy. You do want to make sure that you're removing your ink from your stencil in between each color change so you don't cross-contaminate. I'm trying to be careful to keep my blending brushes, if it's a lighter color after doing a darker color, off of the Post-it tape even, so that I'm not picking up a bunch of that color if possible. And I do change my Post-it tape quite often during this, and I clean my stencil. Now, at times, I don't even really need to use anything to mask off those areas, especially if you use smaller blending brushes. The round detail ones, to me, work the best for this. And I am also trying to fill in all of the available space on my sheet of cardstock. It did take me a full sheet of cardstock, pretty much, to stamp all of the flowers and leaves for my cards. I am blending Limelicious and Perfection together for the leaves, 2 large leaves for each card, 1 medium leaf for each card, and 2 small leaves. Now you're going to notice with the smaller flowers, I will switch to those round blending brushes because I can move quite a bit faster without having to mask anything off. We're gonna, again, just make sure that we're cleaning our stencils well in between each color change. And I'm using the circle shapes on the stencil with the darker shade in that same color family to blend in that darker color. They are looking so good. I do have a microfiber cloth with just a little stamp cleaner, or you can use rubbing alcohol on it to clean up my stencil in between the color changes. Once I'm completely finished stenciling all of my designs for my cards, I will take it and use a little soapy water to clean my stencil really well before putting it away for use for the next time. When I'm creating a card like this, I do feel like a lot of the smaller parts and pieces really round out the design beautifully. So you'll notice that the 3 small flowers and the lots of leaves for each card really kind of fill in the little nooks and crannies. We will be using a pretty good size greeting for our cards. So I tried to keep the florals along the left side of the design and then our sentiments down on that right, kind of along the right side, but especially that right bottom corner or right bottom half and corner. By keeping the colors consistent for each card background, that also kind of eliminated having to go pull a lot of extra colors. You totally can, but I loved kind of just doing that tone on tone. I'm a huge tone on tone fan, so that worked really, really well. And look how amazing these small round blending brushes do for this. I absolutely love them. For any kind of small detail stenciling, these are my go-to. So now I'm just going to grab all of the coordinating dies. If I need to snip any apart that I haven't already used, we will do that. We're going to tape our dies in place over our stenciled flowers and then run them through the die cutting machine. I will do all of that die cutting off camera to save a little bit of time for this particular project, because it was quite a bit of die cutting. But again, I just like to break it down into simple steps. And that way, if you have to walk away and come back for the next day to do, all of your die cutting and then assembly, you totally can. Now, I thought it would be really fun to give our largest flower a little bit of texture. In order to do that, I am going to use the Simon Says Stamp Soft Plaid background stamp and stamp that with the darker color. Now, I realized because I was distracted at the time of stamping this that I boogered that one up. So what I'm going to do is I will recreate that one off camera and we will come back and do that one again. So let me clean my stamp really, really well, and I will show you how I want to do this so that I don't have that stamping on the white part of the outline. We're going to place our stencil right in our MISTI. We'll place our die cut flower right underneath. It's masking off that die cut outline area. And then we're going to take our darker color of ink, in this case amethyst, ink it up, ink the soft plaid background up with that color and stamp over the stencil, and that masks off the area and gives us a perfectly beautiful stamped flower. You could do this with any kind of fun texture type background stamp that you have. There are lots of them out there. And I love how that adds just a little bit of extra fun, especially to a large flower with lots of real estate on it. It just gives it a little bit more pattern, almost like you die cut it from a pattern paper, which I personally love. Maybe even giving you like a pre-made type of floral vibe that you would purchase in a, pre-made package of embellishments, if you will. So we're going to do that for the aqua flower, and then remember, I will have to recreate my pink flower, but I wanted to show you that so you could see that by using your stencil as a mask, it gives you beautiful, beautiful results. Now that we have all of our flowers, our backgrounds, it's time to grab some sentiments. This is the point where if you want to do something other than birthday, you could. It could be friendship, thank you, Mother's Day, any kind of summer occasion, sympathy cards, whatever the case may be. So I chose to go with the CZ Design Simon Says Stamp Big Old Birthdays stamp set. I wanted something big and bold to place right on my background. I want to lay out my flowers, kind of gauging where everything is going to go before I ultimately choose the sentiment I'm going to use for my card. I often like to kind of double check at this point just to make sure. Now, before I stamp that greeting, you can see I've laid it out on the background. I did go ahead and take my stencil and that grit paste, and I want to add a little detail to the center of my flowers. You could do this with ink or any color of paste. I chose to just go with the white grit paste again. But oh my goodness, look how awesome this makes the flower centers look. I just literally did these really quickly, one at a time, so that I could go wash this and stamp all of my sentiments. Not only will I apply the grit paste through the center for my large 5-petal flower, but the multi-petal flower, we're going to do the same thing, and I really like how that looks. I even think maybe a gold or silver paste would be super pretty here. For my sentiments today, I opted to do a nice bold black sentiment on white cardstock for my big sentiment. I stamped Oh Happy Day with black VersaFine ink, die cut it with the coordinating die. Then I stamped There's No Such Thing as Too Much Happy. This is from the Cue the Confetti set. I liked this sentiment with Oh Happy Day, so I'm mixing and matching from multiple sentiment stamp sets. I stamped that on black cardstock with embossing ink and heat embossed with white embossing powder before using the Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Labels dies to die cut my greetings. Then I'm going to take my favorite Simon Says Stamp foam adhesive squares, and we are going to go ahead and adhere our large flower and then our sentiment to the card background and fill in the rest of the space with our flowers and leaves. I am attaching everything here with foam adhesive. I think that little bit of lift from the busy background helps make everything flow beautifully. In fact, I didn't use any liquid adhesive today whatsoever, which I thought was kind of funny. We're going to tuck our large leaves around our largest flower, and you can see how that kind of even helps bring that flower or the floral arch around to the top of the card, almost framing up our sentiment. Once we have all of our flowers placed, we'll go ahead and add our leaves. And don't forget to add the little black sentiment strip down at the bottom. I did choose to go ahead and do the smaller sentiment strip on black cardstock, kind of the opposite of the large one. So we stamped black ink on white cardstock for Oh Happy Day, and then we have white text on black cardstock for There's No Such Thing as Too Much Happy for our sentiment strip. I will be using the thin foam adhesive strips from Simon Says Stamp to attach my sentiment strip underneath Oh Happy Day, and I did have to adjust my florals just a little bit. I wanted that more centered underneath that greeting. Then we'll flip our panel over and trim off anything hanging off of the edge. There's only just like 3 little areas, and there is our card. We'll attach each of these to a white top fold card base, and our cards are all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Stencils plus Coordinating Dies edition of Making the Cut. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.